me about Dirt 5.
Dirt 5. Yeah, it's interesting because I kind of like had a weird pre-release thing that happened where the Xbox Series X build wasn't supposed to be available, but I had already been playing it, and then I found out like, oh, actually that's just like the Xbox One build, and it was just like weird. I had a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and like just had to scrap all the footage I had already gotten. So now I'm like,
Oh,
now I'm actually like in it for real, and I'm split on it in some ways. Like in some ways, like I could, like it's a pretty game, and there's a lot that I can appreciate about it. But then I'm also finding things that are just like, this seems odd. Like, it because I know it supports like the 120 hertz TVs and things like that. And but it's like even on lower settings, certain tracks, particularly some of the night tracks, the pop in, the level of detail management is just like unmistakably distracting. And so I'll be driving around on some of these courses and it'll just be like, it's like literally like somebody is turning the lights on in front of you as you come up the road.
yeah.
And so it can be very, very odd. Other tracks, I don't necessarily get it that much, but then you know how like in Nepal, like in Uncharted 2 or whatever, they have like these little flags that are kind of hanging everywhere, like these strings of flags. There was one track where I was on where it's just like somebody just like sketching across the sky as these flags drew in as I was driving up, and I'm like, okay.
Weird.
And
Maybe you're just too fast,
some of the
Bloodworth.
reflections can look a little weird and stuff like that, and there's some really weird flickering. So it's just strange for like a game that's like, we're trying to push these next gen features and elements, and then seeing like some of the same like old kind of chunky stuff from racing games in the past.
Has it you mentioned it being distracting, but is it distracting to the point where it's like, oh, that caused me to like screw up this turn or something?
No, it's not that. It's not that bad. It's just
Okay.
in certain courses. It's just one of those things that it becomes hard not to notice, particularly when it's a thing where like lights are coming on to things that you're driving up towards. And then some other stuff that is I was surprised not to see is there's not like any kind of there's a lot of mud, but there's no terrain deformation whatsoever. Like you don't leave like any like thick tracks as you go, and like that stuff that was like in like
Weird.
Sega Rally and like the 360, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And in like a lot of the motocross games. So it was odd for me not to see that. It's odd for me to see like some of the features that Codemasters generally has in dirt games, like replays and like rewind.
That stuff is
completely
super basic. Yeah.
not present in this game. So yeah, so I feel like I'm being like on the like more negative side right now, but it's oh, and then have to say the other thing that's really strange to me is that there are a lot of different quote unquote styles of racing in the career as you go through, and you can kind of like as you go through you can start sort of favoring which ones you like. You don't have to do every single race. They kind of branch out. But out of all of those styles, none of them are just a rally course. It's a dirt game without any rally. And it's like, I know they have two rally focused games, but it's still strange for a numbered dirt game to not have any rally representation whatsoever in it, and it's just, there's point to point races and circuit races and these really cool races called icebreakers, which you're sliding around on like a frozen river, and the presentation on it is really nice. You can kind of see like the translucent through the ice and cracks and things like that, and it's kind of has like this slushy, dangerous sort of feel to it, and those feel really nice because you can, you've got to learn how to make the slide work to your advantage rather than your disadvantage. So it can take some practice to get that down. Which is something that I feel like a lot of the other courses don't really have to them. I'm about ready to start bumping up the difficulty because there's so many courses where it's just like, all right, I get the first place in the first half of the first lap, and then just drive the course. And yeah, it's. Oh, and then the other thing that's kind of I'm really split on right now, but mostly not digging, is there's a lot of this like they've gone out of their way to create like this podcast commentary that happens between races and before races, and a lot of it in the beginning has just been like really bad jokes that don't hit. They don't land. But then I did like one of these like one-on-one kind of showdown events, and after that these guys just started going off on commentary, and even though they were like referencing these races and these drama and stuff that like I didn't see happening like in the gameplay or in any kind of cutscenes, by the end of this 5 minutes, I felt like I started to know what they were talking about, because it just felt like a legit podcast talking about these racers and these drama and like what's going on here, and it really felt like they were commenting on a real like sporting event, like a real racing series. And
are you just sitting there listening while
yeah,
that's
you're
happening?
just like sitting there looking at the menu, and they're just like talking and talking and talking. I'm like, okay.
Oh, wow.
Like, this is not really a story, but I'm starting to get familiar with the people that they're talking about, and you know, their conjecture and their predictions for where the season's going to go and all of this stuff in a way that feels kind of legitimate and authentic, even though without that, like, you wouldn't see any. You're just racing courses, you know.
This could just be a me problem, but like I'm playing Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, just getting started on that, and something that always kind of annoys me about Muso games is as you're fighting, characters will be talking and it won't be voice acted. And so it's like, well, okay, I'm fighting in the center of the screen and dialogue is happening in the bottom left. And just, I feel like there's so much I miss, or I just completely tune it out. And in this, like, if I'm looking for something in the menu or my brain's focused on that, I feel like I would tune out what these people are saying, or the opposite, like get so focused that I'm just kind of like sitting there, not really engaged in anything. I don't know. It just sounds a little bit awkward.
Yeah. Well, most of the time it is just like kind of a race intro that you would, you know, typically, you know, in the past, in the older systems, it would just like, okay, well, they're loading the track now anyways, and it's not that long. This was really kind of the exception, to where like not only was, you know, it much lengthier, but I wasn't looking at like a course or anything. I was just, you know, sitting there in the menus listening to this podcast. But at the same time, it felt more valuable than any of those other things that had happened before it, because that was just like groan-worthy, you know, jokes and dialogue and like making fun of themselves in a way. And like, why are you here if, you know, you're just going to act like this thing that is terrible is terrible? Like, I don't.
This sounds so weird, because it, like, not having like super nuts and bolts features, plus, you know, I don't think you're saying like they've added enough new stuff that makes up for that. Like, it just kind of sounds like a disappointing sequel. Like, I don't know why you would gravitate towards this.
Yeah, it does. I mean, in a weird way, like, it does feel like a launch game. It's like, to put it simply, it feels like a launch game.
Sure.
And like a, you know, more basic arcade racer, you know. And there are some courses that I really dig, you know, but then there are others that are just like, the tracks are so wide that, you know, you don't have to think too much about getting around them, and the AI is so easy that, you know, it's like, okay, I'm ahead, and I just do my 3 minutes and move on to the next race. So it can be like I said, it can be a little bit of a back and forth for me in terms of how I feel about it one moment to the next, and so it's really going to take me getting through this whole career to kind of nail it down and see how I feel about it overall.
And how long is that process?
Of getting through the whole career?
Yeah, like what's it?
I'm not
it
sure
like
yet. Yeah, I'm not doing a good track. I haven't really kept track of time too well.
But like if you had to give a guess, like in other dirt games.
Because it's been a while since I played a numbered one. I don't think I played 4, and 3 was so long ago. But I would guess it would be like 15-ish hours. But I mean, racing games are hard to, like, that's the way I like don't even think about hour counts, because you rerun things because
Right.
I got 3rd place or
Right.
6th place, or, you know, I totally screwed this up. So
But it's
Yeah. How long to beat says 9 hours for main plus extra on Dirt 5.
we've such different perspectives on racing games because I feel like I'm in the fortunate position where racing games for me are just something like whenever I feel like it. Like, oh, if I get an itch for like a Burnout or a Forza Horizon, not Forza Horizon.
What is
Uh,
Forza?
is it Forza? Because I
Yeah,
saw it's not Forza.
it's a Z, but yeah, it's Forza, like pizza.
Whoa.
Okay, Fort. Now I'm gonna be self conscious about it.
I
Uh, but yeah, it's
think
just
either way is fine.
it's something that I can just play so casually, and I don't have any
Mm-hmm.
expectation of myself of like I've got to see all of it, and it's just so interesting because I feel like you have played through their entirety so many racing games over the years that I can imagine like what you're looking for or what's interesting to you is just way different than something that I'm looking forward to. Because for me, like the number one thing is accessibility. Like, how quickly can I hop into this racing game and start having a good time? Because I'm not going to be around that long. Whereas
Yeah.
you're like, all right, well, how long is this? How many features are there? And I just, it's interesting to have that perspective. And it's something that I wish we could account for more in reviews, where like a lot of times when we play games, we're playing games as huge fans of something, right? So if I'm reviewing like a JRPG, it's like, well, I'm reviewing this because I love this genre, and so I have certain expectations. I wish we could get like another perspective where it's like, I don't play JRPGs at all, and I think this is bullshit. Just to, I guess, speak to a wider audience of people, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think maybe, again, it being, a launch game, like, kind of goes into that, where, like, I do think that the numbered games they're trying to hit that wider audience, and, like, Rally, and I think that's why it's kind of hard to, like, put the two back to back, because Rally is very intense. It's like you damage your car, and then that damage is going to stick with you, or you're going to have to pay for that damage, or, take time to repair it between races, and you have a lot more things to deal with, and the tracks are crazy narrow and bumpy, and you have to like take every corner very perfectly and precisely, and so then it's weird to come into Dirt 5 and it's like, here's this giant space that you don't have to get around particularly well, and you can still stay ahead. And it's not true of every track. Like I said, the icebreaker ones have pushed me a little bit more, but a lot of the time it's not pushing me. And I think that's essentially what it comes down to. Is like, okay, well, am I gonna bump up the AI to push myself? Because personally, I don't feel like I care that much about the AI itself. I care about getting around that track. The track is the challenge to me.
Sure.
And so the AI kind of is just sort of a marker of how well I'm doing. And so bumping up the AI doesn't necessarily make it more satisfying to me a lot of the time, because I'm trying to get the most out of that course. And if that course isn't challenging on its own, then bumping the AI doesn't do as much in the long term.